What's up YouTube, Bill's here, and in this video we are going to cover the basics of Godot so that you can start making video games in under 20 minutes. Whether you've made a video game before or you're completely new to game dev and Godot, stay tuned to watch this video to learn everything you need to know to get started. So first thing you're going to do is download Godot, and when you open it up you will be greeted with the project manager. Here you will see several things. Here you can create a new project, you can import code from an existing project, you can scan for projects, you can select your various projects. So for example, this project right here, we can edit that project, we can run that project, we can rename it, manage its tags, or we can remove it. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new project, and here you can see all of the information. We're just going to put in a name, call it Intro to Godot, and I'm going to save it into a different folder. Okay, so then we have three different renderers. So we have compatibility, which kind of works with old versions or devices, mobile, which is a little bit less advanced, a little more performant, and then forward plus, which is kind of like the get-all package. I generally build my projects in forward plus or compatibility. I'm starting to use forward plus a lot more, so that's what I would recommend. So now we're going to create and edit. And I'm going to be greeted with a little error right here because yes, I have opened up this project before, but typically in Godot, this is what you're greeted with, except for you do have a 3D scene up there. Mine, I have just removed that from my editor settings. You can do that right here. But this is a 2D scene, and this is what we see. Real quick, we're going to go over the editor. So down here in the bottom left, we have our file system. This is our root of our project, and every file and folder that we create will be listed right here. By default, Godot just spawns with the Godot icon. Up here is our scene tree. So this is the current scene we're working with. Currently there's nothing there. We have import properties right here. Up here we have some various tools for manipulating the scene, which is in this space right here. We've got our inspector that will show a current selected node over here. This will show all of the node specific things, so it's signals and groups, and then history, which I've literally never ever used before. So there it is. And then we have scene settings, project settings, debug settings, editor settings, and a help menu. So the way Godot is structured is everything inherits from a root class called object, and there's basically nodes and resources. Resources are just like data, so like images, fonts, stuff like that. Those are resources. But the core functionality comes from what are called nodes. So we create a scene, which by default is a node. So let's create a scene right here, and we're going to create just a basic node 2D. And so when we look over here to the inspector on the right, we can see everything that this node 2D has, all of its properties. So it inherits from node and inherits all of these properties right here. It inherits from canvas item, which is a graphical component, and so it has materials, which are like shaders, texture properties, ordering, so for Y sorting and Z indexing, and visibility. Is it visible? Manipulating the color properties, and then some light mask and visibility layers. And then everything that inherits from node 2D also has transform properties, so a position, a rotation, a scale, and a skew. And then if we look at node, we have the signals. Signals are functions that are fired when something happens, and it fires once. So for instance, when the object is ready, when it enters the tree, we'll talk about that in a second, or when it's drawn, hidden, when its visibility is changed, etc. So Godot follows a kind of tree formation, meaning at the very base of every project there is a root node, and that node is where everything else is kind of built off from. When something is added to the tree, meaning it's added to the project, that's when we get this entered tree. When it's removed, we get the exit tree, and like the order is changed. It's all ordered hierarchically, so like 0 is the top one, and the numbers increase going down like an array normally enumerates. So here we have our scene right here. It's just a node 2D, but literally nothing happens. And so the way Godot works is it's kind of like a car. A car is a complete product, but it's built of multiple components, right? We have an engine that supplies power. We have wheels so that it can move. We have, a body so that it protects it and holds paint so we can see it. It holds an air conditioning unit. All of those things are components that make up the car, and the same thing happens for Godot. So for instance, if we want to create just like a little platform that a player could run on, in here we can add what is called a static body 2D. A static body 2D is a body that just stays where it is, and it's just going to interact with the world. So when we add that, we have this little air icon, and it says that it needs a shape. So let's add a shape. And now we're still going to get an error because this shape, we actually have to define it over here. Boom, just like that. So now we have a collidable object within our world. But we can't visualize this. So what we can do is we can go in here and we can add a graphical component, such as a sprite 2D, so that we can view and see this in the world. And here, if we go to the texture for the sprite, there's all kinds of different things we can use. For simplicity's sake, I'm just going to drag the default icon and resize it to roughly match that sprite body. And then I'm also going to go to self-modulate and just black it out because we don't care. And so now, if we go up here to run the game, we are going to select, we got to save this scene first. Save it to the project. We see it right there. Now we'll run. And there we go. But now we see that that platform is just up there in the top left because this is the top left, right? Our view is this whole light blue rectangle we see right here. So we actually need to go to the static body and move it down right here to the center of our screen. And now when we run, we can see that platform. And you know what? We actually need to make this a little bit bigger. And then we run it. And there we go. So what we've just done is we have created a platform within a world within our scene. So this is our scene. Everything right here is part of this scene. And it's just a static body with a shape so it can interact and collide with the world, and a sprite, a graphical component, so we can see it. And you can see the sprite has all of its properties over here, you know, if it's animation, regions that we can take of it, offsets, all of that. But now let's create a new scene. And we're going to inherit this from character body 2D. So a 2D physics body specialized for characters moved by a script. So this is going to introduce to us the next kind of component of this. A character body also needs a collision shape to interact with the world, and this needs, you know, we need to choose a shape like that. And we're going to add a sprite so we can see what's going on. And same thing, we're just going to drag in this texture. And we're going to shrink it down to about that. We'll move that right there to the center. I like to put the collision shape on top. Move that to its edges. Perfect, there we go. So now we have a character body with a sprite that we can see and a collision shape to interact with the world. Now, remember the character body said that it can move with a script, so we need to attach a script to it. And we'll hit create. Adding nodes gives us building blocks that have the potential for functionality, but to actually create functionality and interaction, we need to tell those components how to move and what to do in certain cases, and that's where scripting comes in. So Godot can use several languages, but its built-in language is GDScript, which is similar to Python. You can also use C# and C++, and there's extensions for other languages, but GDScript is a great language and it works really well within the engine. And so this is what GDScript looks like, and this is just the basic script. So within each node, there are base functions that are called. So for instance, we have the function ready, which is a base function, and see this blue arrow tells us that it's one of the base functions and that we're overriding kind of like a behind the scenes function. We have a process function, and you'll see that this will soon kind of revert. Yep. There we go, perfect. We have a physics process. We have an input, and there's more like draw and several other functions like that, but we're just going to kind of focus on these two right here. So with our character body at the top, the script says that extends character body, meaning it inherits all the properties of character body, which are up direction, slide on ceiling, properties about what determines a floor, the max angle we can walk up, snapping to the floor, moving platforms, how to interact with those moving platforms, collisions, etc. We can also, up here at the top, write something like class name player, And this just lets us know that this is indeed a player class, so we can access it in other places. Now we declare two constants, our move speed and our jump velocity. And then in our physics process frame, we're going to do some code. So we're going to check if it's not on the floor. So if this is not on the floor, meaning we're in the air, we're going to add gravity. And this get gravity function comes from our project settings, 2D physics, right here. We can change our gravity and the default gravity direction. So +1 meaning like down the screen. And so then we say, hey, if the input is action just pressed and we're on the floor, we add our jump velocity. So this input right here is like a global class, and this global class can be accessed anywhere. So there is an input function, but honestly, in a lot of cases, you'll just call input in your physics process because that's when you need to check that input. We see input down here, and we're getting, the axis between left and right. So are we pushing left, right, both? And if we have a direction, we move in that direction. Otherwise, we slow down. And then we have this function down here, move and slide. So move and slide is also built into Character Body 2D. A good tip in Godot is if you hit Control and click on anything, it opens up the docs for you. And so you'll see that this is the docs for Character Body 2D. And we have several functions that we can call, move and slide being one of them. So moves the body based on velocity, and you can read that for yourself. So now, if we go back to our world, and we drag in this Character Body 2D scene and run the game, we'll see that we now have a character body that falls with gravity. We can move left and right, and we can hit spacebar to jump. And so just like that, we added to a scene of root character body, a sprite to see it, a collision shape to interact, and a script to tell us how to interact. And now we can interact with the world that we have created. So by combining all of these different nodes, you can create complex features for your game. For instance, in one project of mine, we have my player that has a camera, a sprite, a point light to give lighting to the world, a collider, an animation player, which plays all the various animations based on this sprite, which, if we click right here, is a sprite sheet. And so you can see I have the animation properties modulated. I have a collection of nodes that are used as a state machine, and I have a video on that you can look at later. Timers for coyote time and jumping. Raycasts for detecting all kinds of different things. Control nodes, which are graphical elements, so HUD saying lives and stuff like that. Sound effects, and a sound effect player. And so I have a script for my player that contains all of the basic player function code, as well as code specific to each of these states that I have mentioned right here. And then when it comes to adding world elements, your world, your levels, they're just scenes as well. So I have a node 2D, I have a color rect I use as a background, it's just a dark gray. I have a tile map for the world, for visual effects, for biomes. I have my player scene, it's that same scene we were just looking at, we just add it to the scene tree, so it's in the level. I have another tile map layer that's a fog of war, a world environment, which allows me to determine all kinds of visual effects and post-processing, a directional light, which kind of acts like a sun, and some sound effects. And so you just can throw scene upon scene and combine scenes in any way that you need to achieve the functionality that you need for your games. The last thing I want to talk about is how the scene tree is organized when the game is running. So as you can see, we have our root, which is of type window. Now normally when you run an application, you'll just have one single scene in here, which in this project is called app. These scenes right here, my game, multiplayer input, player manager, and scene manager, these are all global nodes, and these can be set by just loading them in right here. It's basically just a script that we load in with a specific name, and we can now access in any one of our projects. So, instance right here, our multiplayer input, we act right here. Notice that it's the same color as that input variable we used in that other example. That's because input is global too, and this is just an input I use with some extra functionality. I also have my game global right there, so I can access that functionality. So these are all globals and appear above, so in the root tree, they appear first before our root scene. So this icon has the scene right here. That is our root scene. These do not have those scene icons, meaning that they are just scripts that are loading. I can't add anything to these. You can only add scenes to our root scene. So in my application, I also have various other scenes that are structured. I have a scene root, which handles the current scene, which is currently main menu. And then you can see everything that's on that main menu. I have my UI, which has a canvas layer, which allows for scaling control. And it has my pause menu overlay. I have my audio root, which has my music and my sound effects. And then I have an animation player that handles transitions between the scenes. And so this is how your game is structured. You have your globals, then you have your root scene, and under that you can add whatever amount of scenes you want. So for instance, if I go, so now in this project I have loaded up my arena, which is basically just a test scene. And within that we can see that we have a world spawners, and under this first one we have a player scene, right? And that it looks exactly like the player scene that I have previously showed. And so in this project we see that our current scene under the scene root is our arena. And so I can change that to be whatever I want. So for instance, so I just navigated back to the main menu scene, and now we can see that is loaded under my scene root. If I go to the next scene, we can now see that that has changed to a new root, right? And if I go to the next scene, now we can see that we're on the level select screen. And so I can change scenes to manage all of my menus and my gameplay, etc. So coming back to this basic little project that we have. So we have a world where our character body was actually added as a part of static body. We don't want that. We want these to be two separate. And we have our character body, which has a sprite and a collision shape and a script. So as you can see, Godot is incredibly powerful. We can add functionality by combining all these nodes. We can tell it what to do by scripting it. We can manage properties, and these can all be set by code or in the viewport over here. We can even add all of these signals that are very useful for inputs, mouse events, for sprites. If the frame is changed, if it's drawn, if it's hidden. For that animation player, you can detect when an animation is done or when animation is started. And so by using those signals, these nodes, and creating scenes and adding functionality with scripts, you can create anything you need to make your game and to make any game you want. And so the best part of Godot, if you ask in my opinion, is it's lightweight, it's fast, it's flexible, and it's completely free. They will not charge you a penny. If you've liked this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers and get this video pushed to as many aspiring game devs who want to use Godot as we can. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.